Hello, welcome to the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. I am your host, Roy Kessel, and today we are very excited to have with us Evan Dabby. Evan is the Executive Director of New Jersey Youth Soccer. So, Evan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We know it's an exciting time for soccer with the World Cup coming up soon. Tell us a little bit about New Jersey Youth Soccer.
Thanks. Yeah, the World Cup will be a really good time to enjoy. In the meantime, we're just doing what we can, just getting everyone build a love around the game. So New Jersey Youth Soccer is a nonprofit. We are servicing more than 100,000 players in the game throughout the state of New Jersey, more than 10,000 coaches, and that's across a variety of programs. So at the high end of the competition, we have our ODP program and our state cups and some regional national leagues that we support, to our community-based travel leagues. We have recreation is a huge focus for us, and we'll talk about that. We provide coaching education for the pathway from the entry-level coach to the those that aspire on the professional end. And then there's some other programs like Top Soccer that we really love. Top Soccer is a program for players with special needs. We have nearly 1,000 players registered over the course of last year. And it just shows the kind of the breadth of programming that we provide to our members.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of exciting work going on, and I look forward to diving into that because some of those areas are so impactful in the lives of the young athletes, and especially, as you mentioned, those with special needs. For longtime listeners, they know I have a younger sister who's developmentally disabled and participated in sports and loved that, and it was meaningful for her. But I want to take Evan back to your childhood and talk about what made you develop that interest and passion in sports.
Yeah, I think you have to look at your family, and a lot of things you do. This was certainly one of those. I was fortunate to enjoy sports year round. So soccer was for me the fall, and basketball was the winter, and then spring came track when you got it, or baseball. So my mom was one who loved an avid sports fan, so we'd watch games. My dad was also good in that we play a lot of the sports, and ironically, he was an exceptional baseball player, but yet me and my brother really struggled in that one of all the sports. So I'm not sure where we failed him, but he still took good care of us. So, as you get older, you kind of narrow that focus, and soccer became the focus for me of those sports. I did play those three through high school, but in college, focused on soccer. And, have to, at that point, credit my brother, 4 years older than me, lifetime, and probably still to a degree chasing him and trying to keep up with him. And, always remember, being the younger brother, watching him on the high school varsity field and then on the college field. And I'm sure there was a part of me that wanted to, follow in his footsteps and do what he did. And I got, the opportunity to do those things. So, soccer was one of the consistents, as well as the sports with family throughout, and, it treated me well.
So what's interesting is you talked about playing multiple sports as a kid. So your father was in baseball. Soccer ultimately ended up where you started. But talk a little bit about what drew you to the game. Why was soccer more interesting for you than baseball or other sports?
Yeah, I think at this age, I reflect more, and we ask those questions ourselves. And I think when you're a kid, it's a little more simple. You just like it or you don't. So I think there's a couple of things. I think the environment was good for the game. So we'll talk maybe at the end. I have some thoughts on the environment that's today that maybe doesn't quite compare. So I got fortunate in terms of the teams and the success. So winning does help. Let's not kid ourselves. And being involved in county championships and NCAA tournaments, that helps. And then I think it's your friends. I think it's a social thing, and I liked being around it. I just always remember where I was and the people, and I still reflect upon those and the impressions that they made. The older captains when I was in high school. I think you just get. Some of it is luck. I think you make your own luck. But it was just a place that was always fun. I was a competitor. I think I still have that in me, and sometimes to a fault. So that that desire to compete, the desire to win, the desire to succeed, and having those opportunities. I think all of those contributed to why, always enjoyed and rarely had, yes, bad days, but I wouldn't say bad experiences in the game.
And it's so important when you talked about having fun, and you talked about as a kid, either you like it or you don't, right? Those are things that kind of come naturally, right? There's no way to force that. And
Mm-hmm.
as a kid, you want to play, right? And,
Yeah.
and I think that that's something that's often lost in many of the, I'm going to call it too early competitive environments, where kids are being pushed into sort of elite or travel programs from, in my view, very early ages.
Yeah. Both my kids currently play. As you get older, the competition follows, but we always try to focus, and it's easier said than done. And some of it's the personality. I think my son certainly has a little bit of my personality, and win is happy and lose isn't as happy. And the culture at my daughter's team, just reflecting on recent games, is, the coaches are doing a really great job of, yes, everyone wants to win and everyone has more fun, but the girls have a good time being together. And, when that happens, and when there's that camaraderie, that culture, to a degree, it's cheesy, you win every day, but, they come off the field and, they've gained something, and they like being around each other, and that goes a long ways.
Yeah, I think that teamwork, you look at, you sound like an active competitive guy, and you look at the relationships you develop through sports. I think back on those that I developed over many years of sports. Those are things that last a long time. You have a certain bond with the people you played sports with that's very different from other people that you may have known in that same time frame.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think of, the captain when I was a junior, and just what I learned from him, from leadership. I talked in another forum, I talked about him maybe not being the most athletic, the most skilled person ever. He was obviously incredibly talented, but he had a personality that, was, you talk about leadership, and that's either you have it or you don't. I think of my coach and my, my friendship that exists today, and still communicate with them. And those are, to have those lifelong bonds that you could probably pick up in a moment, someone who you haven't talked to in 10, 20, 30 years, but you had that experience now 30 years ago, isn't easy. And I think sport allows that.
Well, what's interesting when you look at the different sports, right? You talked about some of the other sports you played. And I think back on, I played a lot of soccer and tennis growing up and in high school and beyond, and other sports. It's always interesting to me to see how kids gravitate to a sport like soccer because of its, I'm going to call it inclusive nature. It's got something different about it in the character of the sport, where when you're playing soccer, even if you don't touch the ball, you're active and you're running around. And the game typically at the youth level is mostly completed within about an hour time frame. Mm-hmm. And you compare that to some of the youth baseball leagues that I've seen, where the games are 2 to 3 hours long, and the kid's going to get maybe 3 at bats, and unless they're a pitcher, catcher, shortstop, or first baseman, right, they're going to get maybe a few balls in the field. It's just not a lot of activity for a 2 or 3 hour window.
Yeah, I think there's a personality, and I think you learn from what you watch. So, we have a ball and we've hit, but my son played a year or two of baseball, and the joke that we still laugh about, my wife says, he wasn't super dialed in the outfield, and it wasn't something of the constant motion. I think he needed a little bit more activity while soccer is suited. So my wife said the only time she felt safe, or he felt he was safe in the outfield because of his attention or lack thereof, so when the mitt was over his face, because at least she knew that if the ball was hit his way, he'd be protected. Otherwise, she was not entirely comfortable with him playing baseball. But that's the joke we like to share. Everyone has their own personality, and we know a ton of people that play baseball. But I guess we joke around that really wasn't one for Zach.
Well, and it's interesting because kids develop a passion, but it also, I think, becomes an aptitude element. It's not a lot of fun if you're bad at a sport, right? Most sports aren't a lot of fun. You're either not getting playing time, or you can see that you're not proficient, right? And I think until people become adults and take up golf, and then they realize they can be bad and still have a good time. But for most other places, it's just not that much fun if you're not good. And so I think it's interesting to go through and look at how kids identify that. But I want to go back now. You talked about college sports and soccer. Talk a little bit about where you played and how you experienced that.
I got a chance, youth soccer in the town rec league, and that travel was a different beast, when I did that. But you started, I think I was in high school at the start of club soccer developing. So I had the club team, soccer team had a lot of success. So that was really exciting. Had enough success that saw soccer as an opportunity in college, and I know I wanted to play. And when I looked at schools, a big conscious decision is where I could play. And, I wasn't a Division I player. I think I was realistic in that, and ended up, having the opportunity to play at Tufts University, and, got 4 years of playing and involvement in an two NCAA tournaments. So, the opportunity, the success, the fun, all kind of built upon itself. I took me into the professional side with summer camps and working, and you develop your network, and then you get time to interview, and you realize, what am I going to do at this point? Because sports management degree wasn't quite as developed, and I really relied on that network. So that soccer playing ironically led to a career, which wasn't anticipated, but no complaints now.
Yeah, it's interesting how that shapes our opportunity and that network and developed, and certainly you've turned it into a career. So, I think it would be great to hear a little bit more about how that career progressed, because we get so many people that want to work in sports, want to be part of a sports organization. How did you get that started? When you look at your career, how you got started in that sphere of getting into the sports world, you're talking about interns and people breaking into, and the advice that you give them.
Yeah, I think you make your own opportunity. So certainly I tell people to get involved and find a way to volunteer or take an internship, and a little bit of what I did. So over the summers, I worked at camps. That was my network. I ironically relied on our high school team manager, Carrie Goldberg, who's agent in sports right now and doing some great stuff. And she helped get that interview, and I'm sure she helped me get that first job. And so, that's a lot of what you need. You make your own success, but you need to leverage some of those relationships and opportunities. So playing, participating, working led to my first job. That was at Major League Soccer. Had a pretty wild, challenging, and intense 16 seasons, and being part of that league's growth, and some a whole set of stories there in terms of that experience. And then, that 16 years, realized was ready for something new. The opportunity and opening as the executive director at New Jersey Youth Soccer came up. Thought it was really a good fit for me professionally, also personally. You as time goes by, you realize you're looking for different things, with family. So I took it and I ran, and 8 years later, I'm in this, in that role and feeling pretty good about what we're doing.
This is Roy Kessel on the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. Today we're sitting with Evan Dabby, who's the Executive Director of New Jersey Youth Soccer. And Evan, great to hear about your experience and how you broke into that before you transitioned to New Jersey Youth Soccer. But now I really want to have people get an opportunity to learn from what you have done, and what you continue to do in that space. So take us through a little bit of the structure and size of New Jersey Youth Soccer and some of the programs that you're operating.
Sure. In terms of scope and size, certainly COVID, there was a dip, but, there's been a recent growth. So we're servicing over 100,000 players throughout the state. From a structure, those players compete on the travel side in travel leagues. There's also some rec leagues. So there's 7 affiliated leagues. There's 350 plus clubs, of which they're all participating, combination of the competitive side / travel and recreation, and also some top soccer programs. So that's a little bit about the scope and the structure. And in terms of the structure, that's been a really heavy focus. We went through a overhaul of our bylaws, and without getting too much into the weeds of that, it's really just been about engaging our members. And, I'm sure a word that I often talk about, and I think will come up in different points, is community. We know that there's a soccer community. We want to cultivate that. Easier said than done sometimes with the competition that exists, not just on the field, but off the field. But in the way we structure it, in the programs that we run, the way we're approaching our annual general meeting, we really want to be engaged with our members to help them, to support them, to learn more, and just create a better environment for kids to play.
So when you look at that's a pretty 100,000 players is a large number, and you're dealing with some very different levels of skill, clearly, right, between the rec leagues and the travel leagues. And how do you talked about engaging the members, right? It's a very different mentality when you look at what the expectations are from the parents and families in a travel environment compared to your local rec competition and league.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, generally, yes. At the core of it, I'm not always sure. My son is playing travel and rec, and it's just, it helps me just to take it all in. So yeah, there's some differences, but I wonder if there's more similarities than we might otherwise think. But I think at the end of the day, it's oversimplistic, but it does come back to having a good experience on the field. We all know you can have a good time and a good experience winning in a good game. You could also have a bad experience, in winning a game. Losing a 2-1, final in a tournament can be something memorable, whereas winning an 8-0 game in whatever top competition is something that was a waste of time. So, just the level of competition, the type of competition, the experience in and around the field. I would, up until this year, I would have thought more in line with that idea of travel and rec's different. But I find myself thinking there's probably more similarities as you live through it.
Yeah, and I think the on-field part, right, in terms of the kids' experience, I ultimately, my feeling was always, as you said, being a very competitive person or overly competitive person, right? It wasn't about the winning and losing. It was about having intense competition and playing at the right level. As you said, it wasn't fun, in my view, to win games 7-2, as opposed to playing a hard-fought 1-1 draw. And the energy and excitement around that is definitely different. How do you deal with some of the challenges now where we see kids being, my words, held back a year to be, for their development, or where you see clubs really? I think one of the challenges in the travel leagues is some of the clubs that will field 3 or 4 teams deep, and the players on the 3rd and 4th team of that club really should just be playing rec level soccer instead of spending thousands of dollars to be able to say I'm part of a travel team, which is something that we see, here at least in Chicago quite a bit of fielding that many teams.
Yeah, a lot of what we do is talk about the policies, just to manage it, because every circumstance is different, and you may have a club that has 4 teams deep in an age group because they may not have another option. That's a possible scenario. So what we found ourselves doing is looking at what can we control, right? And I think one of the things was player movement. We know that you have a team, that you have tryouts, and you set your team for the year. And what we found years ago before we made some adjustments is the theoretical situation of Friday night, 3-4 players on your 13-team roster decide they want to play on a different team. All of a sudden, the other 10 players don't have a team to play with. And, those are some things just organizationally that we wanted to start to, tie up, really nail down the commitment that a player makes to the club and the commitment that the club makes to the player. So those are some of the things that we can do. The others are just rules, on the field to make it, just more successful for the referees. We know that the referees at the core of a lot of criticism, and it's a root problem. Not enough referees and referee respect, and too many videos that we see of abuse of referees. And I think probably even situations where referees are abusing others, because I imagine there's isolated cases where they defend themselves. So it's gotten, again, there's cases, one is too many. I know we only see the worst of it, but, we've really focused on what can we do to fix that. One of them is just have the rules the same between leagues. So you go on a soccer field, it's one set of rules. It's not different if you play in this league or that league. And that, using that example, it's tough for a parent to understand. It's tough for a player to understand. It's tough for the referees to understand sometimes what the rules are when they step on the field. So those are some of the things that we can do. So those are some of the short terms. And then, there's the ongoing discussions about the overall culture that we see in soccer, in sport, and probably on just our day-to-day lives of maybe the human interaction and maybe the respect that isn't there as much as we want it, day-to-day, moment to moment.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about that, because the abuse is out of control. Clearly, you see it on a lot of levels. When my kids were playing youth soccer, it wasn't that surprising to me. But when you if you were to group and classify where the abuse came from, it was frequently from parents who didn't know the game, didn't grow up playing the game, didn't have that respect for the game in that context. And there's the same parents that are screaming and yelling at their kids to do things that are actually completely counter to what their coach is telling them to do or has taught them to do at practices and drills. And they're used to a mindset of, I just want my kid to get the ball and to be on the field the most and to score goals. And soccer at its core, right, you've got 11 people running around for 90 minutes. That's a lot of time. There's not that many touches, and there's even fewer goals. So it takes that teamwork, it takes that leadership and that culture within the organization. And I'm interested to hear how those things get handled in terms of the abuse of the referees.
Yeah, we have a process, not a fun one, but it's a necessary one, where there's hearings when it happens. We are very diligent about following up because we know we need to address it. I think, I'm hopeful we've kind of peaked and now we're coming down the other side of this thing as bad as it's gotten. We are going to introduce some new initiatives in the spring combating this. So I probably won't announce it and get ahead of myself, but things to really support the youth referees specifically. And then, there's the respect campaign. We launched this as an idea. We know we talk about the bad things, but let's also recognize that there's some kids, coaches doing some really great things. So we want to tell that story and celebrate those. We had a team from Ocean Township that on their own will, raised money and donated soccer balls to Afghan refugees. And, NBC picked up that story, and that was such a memorable moment that I think those kids may never forget. The parents probably seeing their kids on TV and telling about what they did. So we know the bad stuff is unlikely to end tomorrow. It's not practical, and we got to deal with that. But I think if we also help tell the good that's going on, celebrate it and kind of lead by example. Let's talk about what good people are doing and model that, as opposed to people model the bad stuff.
Well, and we love talking about that success and things like donating the soccer balls and collecting equipment drives and used equipment. There's so much that's out there out of 100,000 players, and some great ways that we can work on collaborating. Those are the stories we like to tell. So I encourage you to let us know about those so that we can cover and highlight that great work, because ultimately we believe sports have such an incredible power to make a difference in kids' lives and keeps them away from negative influences, whether it's gangs or drugs or violence, keeps them engaged in school, educational activities, and we all know the benefits that sports provide. And so, we try and create that culture of philanthropy and giving back, and I'm happy to see that that's something that you're working with your teams and clubs to embed into that environment. That's really important. One of the things I heard you mention before was about, I think you called it Top Soccer.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that program.
Yeah, so there's probably a dozen or so affiliated programs, actually probably closer to 20. Top Soccer is our program for players with special needs. There's more. Last year, there were approximately 1,000 players with special needs registered. Thanks to the generous support of RWJ Barnabas Health. We provide the registration. We provide the buddy training. These are often the high school kids that go out and work one-on-one with the players. The coach training at no cost. It's a one small way of giving back, and anyone who's ever been involved in it, it's something that I think makes you feel real good as a person. There's an affiliate. It's not Top Soccer, but it's the same concept, and we support those that aren't registered programs. Something called Challenger Sports. My son, as part of his bar mitzvah project, got introduced to it, and he's hooked. He has his buddy Jack from Howell, and they go out, soccer in the fall, and then it's other sports in other seasons, and they've created a bond. And soccer in that case is just a vehicle to get out there, be social, be active, and have fun and make connections. And it's in that case, I think it's provided my son Zach and his buddy Jack, more than we would have anticipated going out there. So really got lucky using that experience.
Well, it's great to see that you're serving so many athletes with special needs. It's so important to give them the opportunity, give their families that opportunity, and it does a lot both ways, both for the athlete with special needs as well as for the other athletes that work with them and get a different sense of feeling, like you said, that feeling of satisfaction of what they're able to give back. It just feels really, really good. So I want to take you for a minute and switch gears and have you tell us, you've been there for about 8 years now. Talk a bit about what's on the horizon.
Yeah. As we look to the future, I think we've got some good stability, growth, and board of directors, and the staff, and the leagues and the clubs, and some really good things happening. So we want to be a little more aggressive with where we go tomorrow. We've launched a Growing the Girls Game initiative, participation on the girls' side and the women's side in coaching. Referees lags behind that on the men. So we've invested there. So we've hosted some coaching courses, free coaching courses for women. A lot of that was courtesy of the generous support of WAGS, sponsoring a C license, grassroots license, and a referee course. We have scholarships for ODP and Young Olympians, and special offers from our partners at Technic Football with Yale Averbush and Train Like Legends and Heather Mitz. So some people and big names in the game who are really stepping up to help us support it. The other area that is a heavy focus is serving the underserved areas. So we're really trying to get aggressive on that strategy. One of those is partnering with, I had mentioned already, RWJ Barnabas Health. They've had some mini pitch builds, and we want to expand upon that and find a way to offer after school programming. We submitted a grant to U.S. Soccer, and hopefully we'll find that successful so that going into next year, we can, use that commitment and support from U.S. Soccer to get into those areas and provide that after school programming. Beyond that, we know the World Cup isn't far in many respects. I think super close in terms of the men that are about to hit the field in a few weeks, and we're engaged with the government officials leading the World Cup, now the host city, not the advance past the bid pass aspect of it, and we're right there with them talking about ideas of creating a soccer community. So that'll take years to develop and play out. But ultimately, we know the game's about having fun. We talked about that. And, actually, I don't even know. I might even see if I have a special guest with it. Hey, Bryn, you want to come in? So if you don't mind, Roy, I have someone here as we talk about it. And as you said, like what this is about, I have my friend here, Bryn. You want to say hi to Roy?
Hi.
So we were talking about soccer, and in my saying it's about a lot about having fun. How long have you been playing soccer?
I think 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years. Yeah. What's the name of your team?
Friel Liberty.
Okay. And what is it that you like most? What do you remember most about this season? Anything for any events that we had that were super fun?
Well, I scored a goal, but it didn't count.
Okay. And what about that fun tournament you had a week or two ago? Did you do something fun?
Oh, we had Fright Fest.
Yeah, what's that?
Fright Fest is like a fun tournament where you dress up in costume and make a pumpkin.
Okay. Pretty good time?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Anything else you want to share?
I forget.
Okay. Well,
thanks for sharing, Bryn.
You're welcome.
So I appreciated that little special guest, but we get caught up in a lot, the wins and all. And, be it Fright Fest or be it when they got together at their team and made some donations for a local, foundation, of a family here in Freehold, it helps remind you that, for some, it's about getting as far as you can on the field, but for more, it's about using that as a vehicle to advance, be a better person, learn, get skills, make friends. So, helps me keep grounded a little bit.
Well, Evan, I really appreciate you sharing all of this great information with us. If people want to be able to reach you for more information and look at the details, we put the info on the screen here, Evan at NJYSoccer.com and NJYSoccer.com for more information about the organization. You can see the amazing work they're doing with 100,000 athletes, with 1,000 people in the top soccer program for athletes with special needs, and very, very impressive work that you're doing. So congratulations on everything that you've accomplished. Thank you for joining us today.
Great, and thanks for doing what you're doing. Help share what's going out there in the world of what we do. So thanks for all that you do.
So before we let you go, I want to put you on the spot for a minute, and we're gonna ask you. Use our superpowers, wave our magic wand, and we're going to appoint you as commissioner of a sport. So tell us what sport you would pick.
So my daughter would love me to say gymnastics, so she loves gymnastics, but I don't know how I could help that sport. So I might unfortunately have to defer to soccer because I think that's probably my best chance to help and make an impact.
So you're going to take over. You're going to push Don out of his office at the MLS headquarters, and you now are in charge. You've got carte blanche to make changes. What's one of the things you'd like to see?
Well, for the record, let's be clear that my time getting to work with Don and having a few meetings and learning from him I want to be clear that that's not what I'm doing or would do or suggest that I think I'm in a position to do. So I can go on, but tremendous respect for what he continues to do, on the professional side. But in terms of, I think one thing, and I'll make it super simple, and I will draw on MLS because I remember when they got back to play in Orlando and they had no fans, you witnessed the game in a different way. It's awesome hearing the game with 30, 40, 50,000 fans, but it's also pretty cool hearing it with just what's on field. Like, we know broadcasts, love to get that on field action. So relating it back to the youth game and some of the issues that we talked about on the sideline, I'd love to find a way that the sideline, and wave my magic wand and say, sidelines are only about supporting and cheering the good stuff, and let the kids play. Let the refs do their game. Because if we could wave that wand and if we could be successful, we know that the refs would have more fun, the coaches would be more successful, the players would have a better experience, and I think everyone would win. Now, I haven't found that magic wand, and until then, I think we just try to figure out what we can do, educate and try to influence. But that's what I would try to do with that commissioner wand you offered.
Well, Evan, thank you again. Congratulations on everything that you're doing with New Jersey Youth Soccer. We look forward to seeing how we can collaborate and support those efforts. Very important work. For all of our viewers and listeners, we appreciate you taking time to join us on the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. This is your host, Roy Kessel, signing off. Please remember to live generously. Thank you.
Thank you.